Welcome to the Echo Lab, the place where music's best-kept secrets come to light. In every episode, we uncover the overlooked legends, the underground classics, and the hidden influences that shape the soundtrack of generations. From cult bands and iconic session players to the untold stories behind timeless tracks. If you're a fan of deep cuts and deep dives, you're in the right place. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss a beat. Let's get into the story behind the sound. Buddy Holly, the rock and roll pioneer. You know, when people talk about the birth of rock and roll, they throw around names like Elvis, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and rightfully so. But there's one name that often gets left out of that Mount Rushmore, Buddy Holly. And honestly, I think that is a shame, because the guy wasn't just some young artist who died too soon. He was one of the genre's actual architects. And the craziest part? He did it all before he was even 23. Buddy was born in Lubbock, Texas in 1936. If you've never been there, let me paint a picture. It's flat, dry, and back then it was dirt poor. We're talking middle of the Great Depression. Dust storms blowing through like nature itself was ticked off. Not exactly the kind of place where you'd expect rock and roll to take root. But somehow it did. Buddy's real name was Charles Hardin Holly. He was the youngest of 4 kids, raised in a Baptist household where gospel music was kind of the glue. His mom, Ella, sang. His brothers played guitar, and his sister chimed in too. It wasn't glamorous, but it was soulful. And I think that's where it started. That feeling that music wasn't just something to enjoy. It was something to live inside of. He had that spark early on. I love this story. When Buddy was just 5, he entered a talent show with his brothers. They handed him a violin, but get this. His brother had actually rubbed soap on the bow so it wouldn't make any screeching noises. Classic big brother move. But it didn't matter. Little Buddy stole the spotlight anyway. That smile, that charm, it already had something magnetic. As he got older, Lubbock didn't get any easier to live in. It was conservative, religious, and honestly, not very kind to anyone trying to color outside the lines. But Buddy was wired differently. He was funny, kind, had this toothy grin that made people want to be around him. And man, was he curious, especially when it came to music. By 11, he was begging for a guitar. His family didn't have much, but they scraped together enough for a beat-up pawn shop acoustic. I imagine it looked like junk to most people, but to Buddy, it was gold, and he played that thing constantly. His fingers bled, but he didn't stop. He wasn't just learning chords. He was listening. To Hank Williams, to gospel choirs, to Randy B stations he'd find by twisting the dial late at night. That's important, because those radio waves carried the raw, emotional stuff that wasn't getting played in white churches or school dances. And Buddy, he was absorbing all of it. In high school, he teamed up with this kid named Bob Montgomery, and they became Buddy and Bob. They played wherever they could, school assemblies, radio stations, car lots. No gig was too small. And even then, Buddy wasn't just covering songs. He was blending things together. Country storytelling, gospel harmonies, the bounce of Randy B. And you could tell he wasn't satisfied with just fitting in. He was trying to say something. He was a scrawny teenager in secondhand clothes with a guitar slung low and a fire in his gut, writing songs in notebooks, arguing with club owners over $5 pay bumps, stringing his own instruments when they broke. His lyrics were simple, love, heartbreak, hope, but there was a truth in them that hit you in the gut. Then in 1955, the trajectory changed. And I mean changed fast. Elvis came to Lubbock. Buddy was there, front row, wide-eyed, soaking it in. Elvis was like an alien had landed. Loose hips, greasy hair, electric energy. He was the future, and Buddy knew it. He actually got to meet Elvis backstage, and Elvis told him he had something special. Can you imagine hearing that from the guy redefining music in real time? It lit a fuse. From that moment, Buddy veered hard into rock and roll. He saved up, bought a Fender Stratocaster, a pretty bold move back then, especially for a country kid in Texas. That guitar would become part of his identity. That crisp, biting tone, it was the sound of Buddy Holly. And it was the sound of something new. He started building a band. Jerry Allison on drums. Joe Malden on bass, Sonny Curtis on guitar. They started cutting demos at a local station called KDAV. They didn't even have a band name yet, but they had a vibe, that hiccupy vocal, that bright Stratocaster, those swinging drums. It wasn't polished, but man, it was alive. Then came what should have been the big break. A Nashville scout saw Buddy open for Bill Haley. Yes, that Bill Haley, and helped him land a deal with Decca Records. At first, Buddy thought he'd made it, but Nashville wasn't ready for him. The producers there, they treated him like a puppet, told him what to sing, what not to sing, what tempo to use, even what instruments to play. They took this raw, honest kid and layered on a thick glaze of polish. It didn't work. The singles flopped. And just like that, Buddy got dropped. Oh, and to rub salt in the wound, they misspelled his name on the contract. Changed Holly to Holly. That's the version that stuck. Most people would have folded. But not Buddy. He packed up and went back to Texas. He knew he had the goods. He just needed the right space to let it breathe. And that's when he found Clovis, New Mexico. Doesn't sound like much, right? But that little studio run by Norman Petty was a game changer. Petty gave Buddy something that Nashville never could: creative control. So Buddy and the guys, by now they were calling themselves the Crickets, headed to Clovis and got to work. The first track they laid down was That'll Be the Day, which Buddy had written after hearing a line in a John Wayne movie. The take wasn't perfect. The vocals were a little shaky, the guitar was rough, but it had soul. And Petty knew what to do with it. He layered an echo, played with the levels, gave it that punch. They sent the track to Brunswick Records, not under Buddy Holly's name, but as the Crickets, to dodge the Decca contract. And guess what? It worked. That'll Be the Day shot to #1. Suddenly, Buddy wasn't just some washed-up teen in Texas. He was a national star. He followed it up with hit after hit. Peggy Sue, originally called Cindy Lou, became a classic. That galloping drum beat, that skipping guitar line, those hiccup vocals, it was pure magic. Oh boy, maybe baby, it's too late. He was on fire. They toured like crazy. Ballrooms, school gyms, the Apollo Theater in Harlem, which was a huge deal. One of the first white rock acts to play there. At first, the crowd wasn't sure what to make of them, but Buddy won them over. He wasn't fake. He wasn't trying to copy anyone. He was just Buddy, and that authenticity bled through every note. Meanwhile, back in Clovis, he was pushing the envelope, layering vocals, experimenting with unusual instruments like the Celesta on Every Day. He wasn't chasing trends. He was creating them. But not everything was rosy. Behind the scenes, cracks were forming. Petty, who had helped him so much, started demanding co-writing credit and bigger royalty cuts. There was tension. Rhythm guitarist Nicky Sullivan quit. Buddy started to feel boxed in, like he was losing control over the thing he had built from scratch. Still, he kept dreaming bigger. He wanted his own label, a studio, a chance to produce other artists. He was thinking way past the Crickets. And then came Maria. In June of '58, while visiting a music publishing office in New York, Buddy met Maria Elena Santiago. She was a receptionist. He asked her out that same day, and get this, they got engaged that night. By August, they were married. People were shocked. She wasn't white. She wasn't Baptist. But Buddy, he didn't care. He was done playing by anyone else's rules. They moved into a tiny Manhattan apartment. Buddy wrote True Love Wave for her, probably his most emotionally rich song. He was growing. He was evolving. But money was tight. Really tight. Despite all the hits, Petty still controlled the finances. Buddy was broke. And that, more than anything, pushed him back out on tour. He signed on for the Winter Dance Party, a brutal 24-city run through the icy Midwest in January, just to scrape together enough cash to breathe again. He built a new band, Waylon Jennings on bass, Tommy Allsup on guitar, Carl Bunch on drums. And off they went. Freezing buses. No heat. Long nights. Little food. But Buddy kept writing, kept laughing, kept dreaming. So there he was, Buddy Holly, 22 years old, already a legend in the making, out in the frozen Midwest trying to stay warm on a busted-down tour bus. And the thing is, this wasn't just a string of dates for him. This tour, the Winter Dance Party, it was a lifeline. He needed the money. He needed a reset. But it came at a cost. The conditions were brutal. I mean brutal. The bus had no heat, and the roads were a sheet of ice. Buddy and his band, Waylon Jennings, Tommy Allsup, Carl Bunch, they were bundled up, sleeping in their coats, sharing blankets, trying to laugh their way through it. But frostbite set in. Carl actually ended up in the hospital. It was that bad. And still, Buddy kept going. He joked. He wrote songs in the back of the bus. He made long-distance calls to Maria every chance he got. He kept up morale. And when he hit the stage, man, you wouldn't know anything was wrong. He brought that same fire every single night. Kids would pack into those high school gyms and dance halls. And as soon as Buddy struck that first chord, the cold just disappeared. He'd launch into That'll Be the Day, Peggy Sue, oh boy, and the room would come alive. He had this way of making it feel like every show mattered. Like this could be your last dance, your last song, your last chance to feel something real. And maybe deep down he knew it, but he was tired, worn down, frustrated, still didn't have access to his royalties, still chasing money he'd already earned. And Maria? She was pregnant. He missed her more than anything. That was the real weight on him. The grind, the distance, the not knowing when it would get better. Then came Clear Lake, Iowa. February 2nd, 1959. They played the Surf Ballroom. The crowd was electric, packed in tight, bundled in coats, stomping the cold out of their boots. And Buddy brought it. That night, he played like he was headlining Madison Square Garden, sweating through his suit, fogging up his glasses, driving his Strat like it was on fire. The crowd went wild. But backstage, he was done. The next stop on the tour was hundreds of miles away, and the damn bus was still busted. No heat. No guarantee it would even make it. And Buddy just couldn't do it anymore. So he made a decision. He booked a private plane. Now here's where the story turns. Buddy had room for two other guys. Waylon Jennings was supposed to go. Tommy Allsup too. But last minute, the big bopper, sick as a dog, asked Waylon if he could take his spot. Waylon, being the guy he was, said yes. Then Richie Valens, just 17 years old, begged Tommy Allsup for a seat. They flipped a coin. Valens won. Those little decisions, those tiny blink-and-you-miss-it moments, they're what history hangs on. Before they left, Buddy jokingly told Waylon, "I hope your bus freezes." And Waylon, just trying to be funny, shot back, "I hope your plane crashes." And man, those words haunted him for the rest of his life. At 12:55 a.m., February 3rd, 1959, that plane took off into a snowstorm, a small Beechcraft Bonanza. Buddy, Richie Valens, the Big Bopper, and a young pilot named Roger Peterson, only 21 years old. The weather was bad. Visibility was next to nothing. And Roger wasn't trained to fly strictly by instruments. The plane crashed just minutes after takeoff, straight into a frozen Iowa cornfield. There were no survivors. Buddy Holly died at 22. And just like that, it was over. The world woke up to headlines that didn't make sense. Radio stations went quiet. DJs cried on air. Fans couldn't believe it. Maria, Buddy's wife, was in New York, pregnant, waiting for his call. When she got the news, she collapsed. She lost the baby the next day. It was that devastating. His mother heard the news on the radio and fainted. Just imagine that. It wasn't just a death. It was the moment, the one Don McLean would later call the day the music died. And you know I get the sentiment. But honestly, the music didn't die. Not really. If anything, it started burning even brighter. Because in the weeks and months after the crash, more of Buddy's music started surfacing. Demos he recorded in his apartment, just him, his guitar, a tape recorder, and that unmistakable voice. Songs like Peggy Sue Got Married, Crying, Waiting, Hoping, Learning the Game. They were raw, stripped down, almost ghost-like. But they were real. They were him. And they showed just how far ahead of his time Buddy Holly really was. I mean, think about this. He recorded over 30 original songs in less than 2 years. That's insane. And every one of them had a hook, a message, a melody that stuck. They weren't filler, they were statements. And his influence? You can't overstate it. John Lennon once said, "If it hadn't been for Buddy Holly, there would have been no Beatles." That's not hyperbole. The Beatles modeled themselves after the Crickets, right down to the name. Paul McCartney even bought the rights to Buddy's catalog years later, just out of respect. He called Buddy the master. The Rolling Stones covered Not Fade Away, one of their first hits. Bob Dylan saw Buddy perform just days before the crash and said that show stayed with him for life. Eric Clapton, he said Buddy Holly made him want to play guitar. That Stratocaster became iconic. Every garage band, every power trio, every rock outfit that came after, they owe a piece of their DNA to Buddy. And the glasses? Man, those big black frames became a symbol. He wasn't trying to be cool. He was cool because he was himself. Over the decades, his songs never disappeared. They popped up in jukeboxes, movie soundtracks, tribute albums. In 1978, Gary Busey even played him in the Buddy Holly story. Won an Oscar for music. And then there was the stage musical Buddy, which toured all over the world and introduced him to whole new generations. Waylon Jennings, who gave up his seat on that flight, spent his life grappling with the loss. He covered Buddy's songs as a tribute. Linda Ronstadt did too. Her version of It's So Easy is still one of the best. Even bands like the Hollies got their name from Buddy. In 1986, Buddy was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as part of the very first class. Rolling Stone listed him among the 100 greatest artists of all time. And eventually, even Lubbock came around. They built the Buddy Holly Center in 1999, filled it with his guitar, his glasses, his handwritten lyrics. But here's the thing. Buddy didn't need statues. He didn't need plaques or tributes. His legacy was always in the music, the feeling of it. What made him different wasn't just that he wrote his own songs or played his own solos. It was how deeply he understood that music, real music, was about truth, emotion, connection. He didn't chase fame. He chased expression. He took gospel harmonies, Randy B. grooves, country storytelling and pop melodies, and blended them like no one had before. Words of Love used double-track vocals before it was cool. True Love Ways hinted at orchestral pop a decade early. The guy was inventing the blueprint in real time. And through it all, he stayed himself. He wasn't some mythic figure like Elvis. He wasn't a mystery like Dylan. He was just Buddy, a small-town kid in glasses who wrote songs about what he felt. About love, loneliness, dreaming big. And people felt it. They still feel it. He proved you didn't need to be loud or flashy or dangerous to shake the world. You just needed a guitar, a notebook, and a voice that meant it. Now, people always ask, what if Buddy had lived? And yeah, it's a heartbreaking thought. Would he have pioneered the singer-songwriter boom? Would he have built a label? Discovered new talent? Ring with the Beatles? Changed Nashville? Changed everything? Maybe. Probably. But the truth is, Buddy Holly didn't need to live to 80 to make his mark. In just 22 years, he laid the foundation for the entire music industry to build on. He once said, "I'm not trying to be weird or anything. I'm just trying to be myself." And man, isn't that what we're all trying to do? Buddy Holly's story didn't end in that cornfield. Not really. His chords still echo in garages and arenas. His lyrics still show up in teenage playlists and wedding receptions. His voice, playful, vulnerable, joyful, is still teaching us something new. He was a pioneer, a kid from Lubbock with a big dream and a bigger heart. And in the end, he didn't just play rock and roll. He helped invent it. Thanks for hanging out with the Echo Lab. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast app or watching on YouTube, we appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, subscribe, and drop a review or comment to let us know what you think. Got a band, topic, or a deep cut you want featured? Shoot us a message. Until next time, this is the Echo Lab, where we dive into the story behind the sound.